everybody to the Culm Citizen Science Investigations event. I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, I'm sharing my screen. I do apologise. I've got two monitors, so it's a little bit tricky sometimes. There we go. So just a little bit of housekeeping. As I said, we are recording the event, so do keep your mic and your camera off to opt out of that. Tonight is very much a celebration of the Culm Citizen Science Investigations, or CSI, volunteers. So we have a really good group of volunteers on the Culm, and tonight we're hoping that some of them are in the audience. And I'm going to pass over shortly to Lydia Deacon from the West Country Rivers Trust. We've also got Simon Browning from West Country Rivers Trust in the room as well as Stephen Johnson, who's the project manager for the Connecting the Culm project. For those of you that may not be familiar with the Culm and the Culm catchment, the map in the middle of the slide just shows the area that the Culm catchment covers, which is from the outskirts of Exeter and Stoke Cannon up through to Holcombe Regis and over to Culmstock and Church Stanton area. And then tonight what we're going to be mostly talking about is the lower Culm, so that's the area between sort of Clumpton and Exeter. And we're going to hear from a couple of CSI volunteers tonight. Then we'll go on to some question and answers. So if you could post your questions in the chat, as I mentioned, or when invited by microphone, if you put your hand up, you should see a function in the Teams options. And then at the end, we'll just give you a little bit of information about some next events that we're holding as part of the Connecting the Culm project. So that's enough from me. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I'll hand over to Lydia, who's going to give us a overview of what's been going on CSI in the Culm over the last year.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll just start sharing. Right, so hopefully you should all see that slide. Is that up for you, Sarah?
Yeah, it's up.
It's up? Okay, brilliant. All right, hello everybody. So some of you will know me or know me via email, certainly, if you're part of the CSI already. So I'm Lydia Deacon, and along with Simon Browning, as Sarah mentioned, we run the West Country Citizen Science Investigations, or West Country CSI, which has been running alongside the Connecting the Culm project ever since around about this time last year. So we're coming up to the year anniversary. So we thought it'd be timely and fitting to have a look back, and also to review what's been happening last year, but also to introduce some of you. I know that a few of you on this call haven't yet come across CSI, so I'm going to start off with having a look at what we do and you know, maybe spark your interest in joining us. So this is a lovely map actually, because it shows all of the rivers in the West Country, taking out all other bits, and it really highlights how dense our river network is in the West Country. We've got rivers, we've got standing water, we've got ditches, we've got streams, and it's all influenced by the geology that we've got around here, the granite moors, and it means that we have got a lot of runoff. Nothing really gets absorbed down. And so that also means that when it rains, anything that's left standing on our fields and our streets gets washed into our rivers. So we're highly surface water driven here in the West Country, and that impacts on our rivers and the issues that we face. So here are some of the issues. Kindly have a lovely CSI photo in the left there, highlighting perhaps how the Culm reacts to some of these issues. So fine sediment from soil erosion, you probably will have come across this if you're in the Culm Valley. You know, the fields that during rainfall that are left fallow, or even just fields that have been heavily ploughed during the summer, it instantly starts running off down our roads and into our waterways, and that can have a sort of quite severe impact on the ecology. It can lock up gravels that fish use for spawning, and it can smother light as well, that can affect both the invertebrates and the plant life within our rivers as well. And then soil compaction is another real issue. Heavy machinery these days on our fields, just compacting it all, and so what you end up getting is quite a dense compaction of the soil, and nothing's, instead of slow percolation of water through the land, you get it running off, and so you get that flashy storm response. Instead of slowly coming up as the rain starts to fall, the rivers really go from nothing to everything, and that is partly due to the fact that nothing's percolating down into our water table. We also get oh, it looks like I've got the wrong label on that slide. Oh well. We also get the runoff from our urban landscapes. So I'm not sure if this will work. Oh no, it doesn't. That's meant to be a little video, but it basically shows how heavy rainfall in our streets just captures everything, and so you get the oils, you get the tire particles, and that's running off into our drains, which quite often run straight into our rivers. As you can see on the bottom right there, we have a lot of things like storm sewer CSOs, so combined sewer overflows, which are storm discharges, which when it heavily rains combines with our sewer network and overflows into our rivers. And continuing those issues, again, probably things you'll see in the Culm catchment due to its rural setting. So if they're spreading slurry before heavy rainfall, that can often join the concoction of pollution entering our waterways and get washed off the land during rainfall. Same with pesticides and herbicides, which pesticides and herbicides obviously have a huge impact on our drinking water, and they're very expensive to get rid of. And we also have issues for barriers to fish migration, so legacy weirs for irrigation or mill leats that have been left over. That can create a real barrier to our spawning salmonoids, and they can't get to their grounds, and that reduces the stocks of those in our rivers. And then also the bottom left there, stock access means we've got more bacteria and higher sediment due to collapsed riverbanks. So those are just some of the issues that are general, I suppose, in their nature to most watercourses. But I have to say that within the Culm catchment, it does ring true. A lot of those issues that we've picked up over the year. And how do we pick them up? Well, we use our West Country CSI form and kit. So the first thing that we start recording when we go out on our West Country CSI survey is the observations, which are very important. So most of the observations are the basis of reported pollution incidents, if we think about it, because when most people report pollution, it's because they've seen dead fish or they've seen pollution entering the waterway. So generally the visual part of the form is actually incredibly important. And part of the reason we asked for visual surveys to be recorded during lockdown since December is because we want eyes and ears on the river. It's really important. And so the extra time that it takes to take a water quality sample isn't necessarily as important as it is just if you're taking your daily exercise, just have a little look, peek over the bridge or look to your left as you're walking along the riverbank and just having a look at what's going on in your river. So the other parts of the form is the water quality measurements. So we take that using the kit shown. So we have a total dissolved solids meter, or a TDS meter. So this is directly related to the conductivity of the water. So the more minerals, salts, metals that are dissolved in the water, the more conductive it gets. Low levels of dissolved solids in waters such as those in Dartmoor, near to the source of the river, are a result of low levels of input from the surrounding landscape. As the river runs down to the sea, it collects material from many different inputs, some of them natural, some of them man-made, such as farms and sewage plants and factories and residential areas. And this typically increases the amount of solids dissolved in the water, leading to generally a higher reading. Harmful pollution from things like sewage and slurry and factory discharge will usually elevate your TDS reading. However, some pollutants such as oil can lower conductivity, therefore it should be used as a general indicator of water quality, not a specific measure of toxicity. And geology will influence the normal level of conductivity in the water course. Obviously, with our general granite areas in the higher ground, we have a lower conductivity. But if you go down, for example, to the east coast, you'd have limestone, which would be highly conductive, so that they dissolve a lot of minerals into the water. And basically regular monitoring will allow you to find out what's normal for your water course. And then that meter also measures temperature. So that's a vital parameter within the river ecosystem. It controls many of the aquatic species' life cycles, and obviously the temperature fluctuates during the seasons. However, you do get variation within that, particularly small rivers and streams. And another obviously important reason to track temperature is the impact of a warming climate on our water bodies, where we're seeing much higher temperatures in the summer than we normally would, and that really affects some of the species of fish, salmon in particular, aren't particularly tolerant of water over 18 degrees. So these sort of things really need to start getting monitored, because it will affect the biodiversity within our water. And then below we've got the turbidity tube. So that's a measure of the optical clarity of water. So the more suspended particles we have, the lower the clarity and the higher the turbidity. You often find your water body gets more turbid after heavy rainfall, of course, due to the fact that soil is running off the fields, as I mentioned before, and sediment being mixed in the water column. And then also in the West Country, we also have mining issues as well, so that can increase the turbidity. But yeah, the loss of topsoil obviously is a huge issue, both for the farmer and the river, and also it can contain chemicals and fertilizers and pesticides. So tracking the turbidity of water is really important, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the aquatic life, such as the invertebrates and fish, really rely on a clear water column to survive. And then finally, we've got our phosphate test. So we have a little strip that's impregnated with blue, or a blue tab that turns blue, or a white tab that turns blue when the water has phosphate in it. As you can see in the bottom right there, the water has turned very blue in that one. So phosphate occurs naturally within our river ecosystem, but in very low levels, around sort of under 0.05 milligrams per litre. So very low levels, and you wouldn't be able to pick that level up with our test. So if you are actually picking up anything with your phosphate strips, it's above the normal natural levels, and therefore higher levels, may indicate that we've got anthropogenic input. Phosphate is found in animal and human waste, cleaning chemicals, industrial runoff and fertilizer. So this can be a good indicator of pollution. Having raised levels of phosphate can lead to increases in plant growth within the watercourse, and then that leads to a depletion of oxygen due to the plant's aerobic respiration during the night. Without oxygen, aquatic species cannot survive, and the river ecosystem collapse, and you also can get anaerobic conditions due to the bacterial decomposition of those plants when they die as well, and that can lead to really, well, basically eutrophication, so where there's no oxygen left in the river and everything dies, which is obviously the real extreme of that. So I feel like this is a good time. I realise that Alan Ward has kindly said that he'll give us a little bit of a talk about his experience with CSI in the Culm catchment, and I know that he has to head off at 4:30. So Alan, are you there now?
Yeah, I'm here, Lydia.
Hi Alan, would you like to have a little talk now? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I started, I guess, back in October last year, and I mean, the backstory for me is that I've been abroad in the US, in Texas, for about the last 15 years, and but the West Country here is kind of home for me, and you know, we finally kind of came back to the UK as a family, and ended up having to go and live at my parents because we had nowhere to stay during these COVID times, and still trying to get a house. But anyway, that's by the by. But so I've always had a natural interest in kind of the water quality, both kind of you know, down by the seaside. I remember as a kid going playing with my brother on the rocks, and then swimming kind of near shore down in the Carline Bay, St. Austell area, and you know, in the 80s, and just being completely intrigued by these massive sewage plumes that would be coming out near shore from these, I don't know if they're CSOs or they were just direct sewage discharges from holiday camps. And you know, I was just a young kid. I mean, we were swimming close by them, but and then obviously when I saw them, we kind of stayed away. But and then also then kind of swimming in rivers as well. But I was always kind of struck by kind of the smell in the rivers. And then anyway, so you know, I kind of become a professional person, go about my way, and then I come back to the UK, and because I was living in Culmpton, you know, I just started to pick up where I left off many years ago, and just started reading about kind of the health of the local water courses, and came across the Connecting the Culm website, which, by the way, is an absolutely fantastic website. So kudos to the folks that put that together. I'm still reading through that and find new fantastically intriguing stuff. By the way, I just did complete a survey on that, by the way, a questionnaire. But so and then you know, I was reading about, you know, some of the challenges in the lower Culm area where I was at, and the plight of the crayfish and what have you. So, and then lo and behold, there was a link there to become a volunteer citizen scientist, which, I mean, just completely thrilled me. And so that's when I kind of reached out to Lydia and Simon. So I haven't done too many samples. The locations I have are in and around Culmpton. I have recently moved to Tavistock, and so I'm looking forward to getting out to the River Tavi. And one of the things that I do want to do going forward is, and I think the River Tavi is definitely going to afford this opportunity, is taking a little bit more time at the sample locations, and really just maybe taking a bit of a chair and seeing what kind of wildlife I end up actually seeing. In Culmpton, you know, I had a railway line next to me and a road bridge, and then another site was kind of in the town, and then I had another location by I think it was a paper plant there in Helly. But so yeah, I never got to really see much in the way of the wildlife bits, but no, it's been really interesting. It's been great playing with the equipment, and as my kids will attest to, I'm constantly talking about chemistry type stuff, and so being able to go and measure phosphate levels, and you know, I'm dragging the kids along to see this, because this is just, I mean, I'm like a kiddie in a sweet shop with this stuff, and their interest didn't last quite as long as mine, but nonetheless, yeah, really interesting. And you know, maybe one day I'll see an otter. I do know at my mum's in Columpton, which there is a little leat just adjacent to her land where there's a little tributary that go and feeds into the Culm, and she has seen otters there. So, but that was before my time, and I didn't get any photos of that. But so yeah, really excited to maybe get into this more and more and more. But yeah, I guess in terms of what I've learned, you know, in terms of the quality of the river in the Lower Culm, I mean, it's varied. I've seen phosphate levels down from 0 up to 500-600, I guess. Turbidity always tends to be very, very good. See some foam every now and then. Definitely some soil erosion and bank erosion from the sides, and but yeah, it's been thoroughly rewarding. And as I say, I'm now down in Tavistock, so I'm not going to really be able to do the Culm anymore. So it's a bit of a farewell to the Culm, but I will take my energy and dedication down to Tavistock and maybe see some otters.
That's great, thank you, Alan. Yeah, no, it's been good to have you and look on the Culm, but we look forward to seeing your samples from the Tavy anyway, and maybe you will see an otter. I'm not sure if the Tavy has many otters. I'm not sure, but yeah, no, that'd be grand. Thank you for that. The other one I know who has to go off fairly soon is Ted. So Ted, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Ted. Would you like to talk a little bit about what you've been doing and with the West Country CSI?
Yeah, I've been doing the West Country CSI water testing for my DAV, so I can get my volunteering award. And I've been working on this for a little while now, and now I've sort of gotten stuck into it, and it's not just for my DAV. I'm just doing it out of interest because I spend a lot of time in and near water. I used to go down to the river quite a lot when I was little, and I do a lot of kayaking and diving. Yeah.
Oh, that's great, Ted.
Yeah, it sort of just fits in because the quality of the water when I'm diving and kayaking, it can be concerning at times. So
yeah, absolutely. Where do you go diving?
Well, Lundy Island quite a lot.
Oh.
Yeah. Seals as well.
Very nice. Oh, that's great. And have you learnt much from doing West Country CSI? Did you know much about water quality before you started?
No, not really. I didn't know hardly anything about it, and now I just feel I've learnt so much that I'm almost an expert on it now.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it. That's grand. Yeah, no. And has your DAV finished now, or has it got a bit more to go?
I've got just a bit more to go, and then I'll be done.
Brilliant. Oh, well done, Ted, and thank you for talking, and thank you, Alan, as well. So I think we'll have an opportunity to open it up to more of you if you'd like to talk about your experiences so far. But I'll carry on with my presentation for now, and then we'll come back to a discussion at the end. So one thing that we've sort of aimed to do this year, it was a big milestone for West Country CSI, was to produce scorecards for 2020. It's not something we've done before, actually, but we feel that the data, first of all, is incredible. What everyone's collecting, we're getting more and more interest every year, and 2020 was no exception, despite the difficulties, of course, with COVID and the lockdowns. So this is the Lower Culm. Now, one thing to mention before we start on this is that we had to set a limit. So we do have a lot of surveyors around the West Country, and they're covering a lot of different water bodies. So we had to set a limit of how many sample points would result in a scorecard, and we set that limit as 12 because we feel like that usually results in around about once a month, and that gives you a fairly good idea of the health of the river if you're doing monthly samples, because you're capturing each of the seasons and hopefully getting a good idea of what's going on. So it was the Lower Culm that got the 12 samples this year. Obviously, we do have samplers in the whole of the Culm, but catchment, but for now it's just the Lower Culm. Obviously, we hope that next year we will have those tributaries and the Upper and Mid Culm as well, just because we'll have, you know, a lot more time. So in last year we only started sampling in the Culm in spring, like I mentioned earlier, mainly due to the fact that we were in lockdown, of course, and so that sort of curtailed that start of things, and you can really see that in the graphs on the right hand page. They start around May time, I believe. So the data so far points to a fair score for the Lower Culm water body, and that's mainly due to the fact that you're frequently seeing high levels of phosphate and turbidity and the presence of invasive plants. So we take all of the different aspects into account to give an overall score for the Culm. However, it is positive to see that there is often wildlife spotted during these surveys, and all of you who've taken surveys, it's really great to see you putting other. If you don't see just the wildlife we put on the form, you've ticked other and you've said what you see, and that's really nice to see. Obviously, it's, you know, the form is there to sort of guide you, but the other section is important as well, and we like to see what you see outside of the constraints of the form, particularly with the wildlife. So this is basically just a summary, and I think Sarah's going to make this available to the next newsletter, so you'll be able to get a higher quality version and have a really good look at what we found with this scorecard. So I thought I would just talk briefly about how we came up with these scorecards and how the score was worked out. So this is a little bit sort of wordy and numbery, so apologies for that, but hopefully with the colours you can kind of pick out the main issues and the main sort of scores that we're looking at. So each category is assigned a score, and we've done that from expert knowledge. So we've used our ecologists that we've got, the West Country Rivers Trust, and Simon has used his knowledge to come up with what we think is reasonable scores for each of these categories. For the pollution section, the higher the score value, the worse the category for the river, and for the ecology, the higher the value, the better for the river. So we also have negative scores for the wildlife and the problem plant species. And then the total score is at the bottom there. You can see you've got an average and a total score for the Culm catchment, and that's how many times that category has been selected times by the score assigned. And then the average is calculated from the score divided by the number of samples taken, and that is what we use to calculate the overall placement on the health scale. So as you can see, there's two things that jump out for me in terms of the red categories for the Culm, which is Himalayan balsam and foam. So Himalayan balsam is obviously an invasive plant. It can take over riverbanks, certainly shades out other species. So particularly the native species can't really cope with Himalayan balsam. And there is, I don't know if it's concrete evidence, but certainly people talk about the fact that it also destabilizes banks. And that's because its root system's very, very shallow. So if anyone has been out Himalayan balsam pulling, it's actually a very easy job, even though you might have a lot of plants. They are very easy to pull out. the ground, whereas, for example, if you were to try to pull a bramble out of the bank, it would be a much harder task, and you may even not ever get to the root. And that, in theory, should hold the bank together much better, whereas Himalayan balsams, in theory, would let the bank destabilize, and then you'd get the bank collapsing. So it's not great to see that there's lots of Himalayan balsam there, but again, because we're working with the Connecting the Culm project, that's hopefully something that we can start to tackle and get some volunteer days out Himalayan balsam pulling. And it's a great to see that link with the CSI and you guys get out there spotting those issues, and then we can concentrate our efforts in the right areas. So the other issue is foam. Now, I thought I'd concentrate on this a little bit more. So this I got from our friends at the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust. It's an Environment Agency document. So if you want to see the whole document, I think I've referenced it there. So it's actually an interesting document to go and have a look at, because certainly I wouldn't confess to be a foam expert, and it is difficult to tell the difference between what's natural foam and what is, you know, a foam man-made and an issue. So, you know, things, basically the natural decomposition of leaf material and natural sort of basically fatty acids from decaying organic material, and they're released by, and they can be released by small organisms as well, and when that dissolves in water, that produces that sort of foamy browny layer on top of the water, and also sort of the brown water that drains from bogs and wetlands. That's also high in dissolved organic carbon, which due to high productivity and slow breakdown of plant material, that causes the natural foam. So you have to kind of look at where the water's coming from, certainly with foam, because that can be a huge influence over whether it's natural or man-made. But, you know, not all foam is natural. You know, man-made products such as detergents can cause foam, and human activity, which may cause the increase in algae or aquatic plant growth, such as fertilizers and that sort of thing, that can increase foam production. So it's definitely worth having a look at this foam document, and I'm certainly not saying that you've all got the wrong foam, but it's just worth informing yourself, and that's part of the reason that we set up CSI, is to better understand and to educate yourself about these issues, and, you know, to question whether you know what that pollution source is and where it's coming from, and I think there's some really useful information out there to inform yourself, and one of them is this foam document. The other thing to mention here, whilst we're on the Environment Agency, is that if you do see a pollution incident, or even just a chronic issue that you think's happening over and over again, it's definitely worth letting the Environment Agency know. They have an incident hotline, which is 0800 80 70 60. Or they do have an email address, and I can pop that in the chat at the end of the presentation, because that's quite useful if you have pictures. So you can send that email address, you know, the issue, where you saw it, and you can also add pictures, and you can ask for updates on it as well. And the more you report an issue, then the more likely it is to be bumped up. And I know there's a lot of instances of where things go unreported, or not unreported, but and aren't dealt with by the EA, because they generally only go out to very high level incidents. But if you report it, they're much more likely to you know, open their eyes to it. So this is just a little look at how we can help with CSI. How can you know, what, by doing a survey, how are you helping? So by merely recording what you see on a CSI survey, you are raising awareness of any issues that you come across. So, you know, by adding that to a cartographer, we are then made aware, and we have to sign off every CSI survey. So if there is anything that we think, oh, maybe that's quite a serious issue, we can report it, and we can also link it with Connecting the Culm, which it's hugely beneficial that we have a project going on in this catchment. You know, not every catchment that we have CSI volunteers have a project alongside it. So it's really beneficial that we can actually then go to the Connecting the Culm team and we can say, can we do something about this? How can we use the project to help this out? So by just simply doing a CSI survey, that's hugely beneficial. Obviously, spotting an issue once is important, but to understand its true impacts, we need to look at the long-term data. So this will show any patterns and tell us if it is truly a serious chronic issue or merely just a low-level issue that only occurs occasionally. That's something that definitely long-term data tells us. And then being out and about on surveys means you are more likely to spot serious pollution, as I mentioned earlier, which should always be reported. And, you know, having those bit more informed people around our riverbank is hugely helpful. We can also use the data to inform future projects and concentrate work. And as I said, we have the project already on the Culm, so it's really good to improve the catchment through this work and through the nature-based solutions and the blueprint, and the CSI volunteers and their data is working alongside that. So that's really lovely to see. And arguably the most important is that you as CSI volunteers understand the river better than most, and therefore are able to understand your personal impacts on it and the consequences. And that knowledge can be passed on and shared within your communities, which hopefully leads to the spread of that helpful and knowledge about the river, because a lot of people don't understand the impacts of what they do on their rivers, and certainly that education and information is really beneficial. So as I mentioned, we don't, you know, have a scorecard for each of the catchments yet. This is the current CSI survey points. We've got the Riverfly and CSI survey points, and then the red dots are the EA monitoring points. So that's ex and current EA monitoring points. So as you can see, we have got gaps in those blue dots, and it would be really nice to fill those red dots with people and get scorecards for each of those different water bodies. Particularly as you see the Spratford stream, I think it is, that's got bad status. I think it's the Spratford. And then we've also got this things like the Ken stream, the Fulford water, the Halberton stream and the Weaver. So it'd be lovely to see people getting out and about those streams and get consistent surveys from all of those water bodies so that we have a 2021 scorecard for the whole catchment. That'd be great to see. And we'd also love to be able to run in-person events as well next year, so that hopefully we can basically recruit a few more people in those different areas, and certainly if we get more people than those dots, we generally say every 3 kilometres is a general rule for sample points. So I think we can probably fit a couple more onto those tributaries by the looks of it. But yeah, it's certainly a good thing to aim for 2021. And this is a few of the really great pictures that we've had from the Culm catchment last year, and it's always really lovely to see the pictures that go alongside the CSI surveys, because it gives myself and Simon a lot more context, because of course we've not seen the whole of the West Country just yet. So it's nice to see it, and as we can't get out and about much at the moment as well, to see what's happening in your area, and also if you are unsure of anything on a survey, taking a picture is the perfect way to get help or insight into it. So that's all from me. I'm happy to take any questions. As I said, Simon's on the call as well, so he can answer questions as well. So if you do have anything you'd like to ask, then that's fine. We'd love to hear from more of you if you'd like to share your experiences or share any issues you've had, or also we're very open to feedback of the CSI scheme. So anything you may have picked up on that you think could be improved, or any additional tests that you'd like to do, it's interesting to hear, and definitely something we always work to do with the CSI scheme is improve it. So I do have a little slide that just asks a few questions that maybe you can have a little think about, and if any of you are willing to speak up and answer those questions, it'd be really lovely to hear from you. So thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Lydia. That was a great run through of everything that's been going on. And just before people sort of jump in to either put their questions or answers in the chat or put the hand up to volunteer and answer, I wondered if people could just for quickly a moment unmic their microphones and just give everybody in the room a round of applause, because I know some people have to head off soon, and it would be just really nice to celebrate all of the work that the volunteers have done. Fantastic, thank you everybody, it was really good to see the logo.
Oh, Sarah, you're muted.
Thanks, Lydia. I muted myself after the applause, very habitual. Just wanted to ask a question that was in the chat from Emma, and she put monthly readings at how many points in the river? Just
well, it's very much a personal choice, Emma. I mean, in general, say on average, people take 2 sites to do monthly, but that there's, you know, we have people doing 1. We have some incredibly dedicated people doing 5 or 6 samples a month, but it's about sustainability as well. So although we ask for monthly samples, we want you to carry on with the scheme. We want you to enjoy the scheme. So it's about what you think you can manage personally. That's the main priority.
Brilliant, thanks, Lydia. Is there anybody who would like to unmic and answer one of the questions that Lydia's put on the screen, perhaps, or ask a question of the team that's in the room?
Yeah, if you're interested in volunteering, what's the way to do that?
It's a good question, and probably I should have put on the slide. I just realised that. I'll put it in the chat. You just email csi@wrt.org.uk, and myself and Simon monitor that that email address, so we can get you signed up. But I'll pop it in the chat now.
Yep.
Lydia, it's Andre. Quick question: are you optimistic or pessimistic about the state of the rivers?
The rivers in general, or the Culm?
The Culm.
The Culm. Okay.
No, let's say the rivers in general.
Well, I mean, you have to stay optimistic. I think the Culm having a C+, or the lower Culm getting a C+ score for its rating shows that it's certainly not the worst. It's sort of, you know, it definitely has pollution pressures, but it's projects like Connecting the Culm that give me hope that our rivers will improve, and it's people like yourselves that also give me hope. So I generally hold a more optimistic view of the state of our rivers, purely because of the work I see that's being done to help improve them.
Brilliant, thanks, Lily. I think Derek wanted to come in. I had to mute him because the feedback was affecting your sound. But Derek, if you want to come in now, that would be great.
Right, I've just started surveying down in the Lower Culm in Stoke Cannon. I've got a couple of tributaries by the school. Happy to sample those, and also on the bridge as well, where it's relatively easy to collect samples. Is that enough in terms of sampling in the Lower Culm?
Well, certainly for yourself, Derek, I'd say that 4 sample points is enough, and hopefully that's sustainable for you. The way we get round, you know, getting more people or getting more sample points is getting more people involved. So, you know, getting your local community involved and introducing them to the scheme means that we can get more people sampling. The other thing to note is that we want to be fairly specific about sample points in general, and we want to focus on those sample points which are going to give us the most important information. So the other thing to note is that if there are multiple people in that same area, there's no harm in multiple people sampling the same spot, but just doing it at different times of the month. And therefore you get, you know, a bi-weekly sample, for example, just because you're getting alternative people sampling that same spot.
How many people are sampling in the Stoke Cannon area, do you know?
I think there's only 2 currently. I'd have to double check that though. Yeah,
it'd be quite good to have some sort of contact details if they were happy to pass them out.
Definitely. I mean, certainly within the Culm project as a whole, it would be nice to have a bit more contact between you all. So, you know, I've sent a few group emails out to all the people that sample in the Culm, but obviously I try to keep those email addresses private for now.
Oh yes.
But if there's you know, an opportunity where people are willing to converse privately, then that's absolutely fine, and a great way to connect you all. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a glitch one month and you couldn't make it, or whatever, it'd be quite handy. It'd be good to know that somebody else had
absolutely
hit the slack.
Absolutely, Derek, and that's the way things are sustainable as well. Sorry, Andre, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's just to say that I'm well, I started down at Stoke Cannon, but after my first event, we were flagged off with the lockdown.
Yes,
so we was get in touch and coincide from there.
Yes.
Oh, that'd be good. And I think you're going to send me out a nitrate kit at some point.
I have just ordered those, Derek, so they'll be on the way to me and then on the way to you as soon as possible.
Excusing ignorance, what's the nitrate a marker for? Is that more fertilizer, pesticides, that sort of thing?
Generally it's the farm runoff which increases the nitrate.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Thank you.
No problem.
Cool, thanks, Derek and Andre. We have a question from Gordon about access to the river for people with disabilities, particularly the sort of bit around Ufcombe. Gordon, if you wanted to unmic now, feel free to you know, add your context to my description.
Yeah, I use mobility. Actually, I've got 3 different mobility scooters, and one of them is a dedicated off-road mobility scooter that you can go across fields on Dartmoor and all that. And I regularly walk where I can along the Culm, so up at Ufcombe or down at Callum John, and in Cullumpton. But there's actually very few places that with a mobility scooter you can get down to the river edge, even though there's a footpath, because of gates or small flights of steps or whatever. And I just kind of wondered, in your longer term things, is that something you're going to raise with the appropriate people? Because quite often it's a small change and you could get there on a scooter. It would just be a question of changing a gate. So, for example, along the Tiverton Canal, they put in lots of gates that are 1.5 metre wide with two-way hinges and locks, and that just makes it really easy. But elsewhere, they haven't done that. So I just wondered what the situation is on that, because I'm regularly walking the river and I can't actually join in your project because of that.
Yeah. Well, definitely something that we can raise with the Connecting the Culm team. I think that it's I mean, local council certainly that are working with the Connecting the Culm team and others. So I think that would be a great thing to do. I know Stephen's on the call. If you want to come in, Stephen.
Thanks, Lydia. Yes, also on the call is Mark Baker, who is the manager of the Grand Western Canal. So he might have something to say about what they have done, which has been positive from your point of view, Gordon, before I mention about other stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, hi. We are keen to get involved in the project. I've already been in touch with Simon, and we're keen to do some sampling along the canal. The EA stopped doing their sampling at 2 points along the canal a few years ago, and so we're very keen to get involved. And so if Gordon or anyone else that struggles with access along the rivers wants to get involved with the project, then we'll be able to provide a more accessible way to get involved for sure.
Yeah, so and then I think in terms of the wider project beyond the canal, we're working directly in the project with two sites, at Killerton down in the Lower Culm, so Colin John that you mentioned, Gordon, and Cold Harbour Mill as well this year, which are two sites. Cold Harbour Mill is the elite off the main river, but both of those are places where we're working on nature-based solutions interventions and events and access as well. And then in terms of the wider catchment beyond those two sites, we have an access working group, which we talked about before, Gordon, which you'd be very welcome to join. We've got the next meeting next Thursday, and that's been quite interesting. We've had people from the Devon County Council, Public Rights of Way, sort of feeding into that process or giving me and the team a bit of context of what they would recommend, what they can and can't get involved in. So some of it has been more about sort of general access to the countryside and to the river across the whole catchment, because there's some really interesting sort of hot and cold points where there's areas where there's actually a really high density of kind of riparian footpaths and access points, and then other places where there's just nothing for kilometres. But like you say, Gordon, the quality of those access points is also something that we will be discussing in that group. So with your local knowledge, that would be really valuable if you're.
Well, if you could email me a link to that group, then when I can, I'll join in on that. Because, as I say, there's lots of paths that could be accessible that aren't.
Thanks, Gordon. I think it's a really important point that you make as well, because we've been talking about access and other, working with nature and things as part of the Culm Garden Village development. But it's really important not just to focus on new infrastructure and new things, but actually just, if it's something as simple as changing gates in a couple of locations, that could be something which, we could directly help with, but it's knowing where those places are and the people that we need to talk to. So as Lydia said, we're working with district councils, parish councils and things.
So a good example for you is Clumpton, where the old greenhouses were. It's now a housing estate, and they replaced a gate there on the Honiton Road with a 1.5 metre gate with these double hinges, and then they did the same at the other end, down by Old Hill. So that then gives you several fields alongside the river that you can now access, whereas before you couldn't, and it was purely a question of changing the gates.
That's really useful to know. So I think, and we've got this as part of the working groups, we've got this mapping tool where people, I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago on that call, Gordon, but there was we can capture locations of specific issues and specific opportunities like that, and then we can follow up beyond that. So I think Sarah's going to mention the other events coming up, but next week there are a couple of working groups for people who might be interested.
Yeah, I'll mention those shortly. Just in the interest of time, there's obviously a lot of interest around the access issue, which we can take off into other arenas. A couple of other people had their hands up. Annabelle, if you're still in the room, would you like to ask your question?
Well, it was just an answer to Lydia's questions about what we'd got out of the being involved. So I've really enjoyed it and felt that I've learned a lot just by getting a bit more knowledge of the river. I walked by the river for years, but just doing the surveys, and I'd like to develop it a little bit more. So rather than giving it up, it's been a bit funny the last couple of months. We haven't been able to do the proper surveys, but I've still been walking by the river, and it's possible that I could do another point somewhere, maybe like where there isn't anybody on the Spratford stream or something like that, I'd be quite interested in doing that maybe.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic, Annabelle, and great to hear that you get a lot out of the CSI program. It's something not often we get to interact with people at the moment, so it's nice to hear the feedback. So thank you for that. It's
just really interesting to see how the river changes and how that changes the chemistry, which you kind of know, but when you see the actual information, that's quite powerful. It's also a bit alarming at times. You sort of think, gosh, this is real. I can't pretend anymore that it's all okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to that evidence base. You can go on people's anecdotal evidence and say, oh yes, the river's like this, but if we don't have the evidence to back that up, we don't know. So it's not. No, that's great. Thank you, Annabelle.
Thank you.
And Carl, you had your hand up, but I wasn't sure if it was again or whether it was a sort of residual hand. So if there is anything additional you'd like to add, please do feel free to ask or answer.
Yeah, mine's asking rather than answering. So I've got general interest with the waterways in Culmpton, as I'm a fly fisher. First one, I don't know if Alan's still there, but wildlife recently that I've spotted are kingfishers, dippers, great heron, little egret. Yeah. And there's also evidence, I'm an otter surveyor as well. And there's also current evidence of a male otter on the Culm. The one thing that is missing at the moment, though, a fish. We've got very low fish stocks. Very low fish stock, so or it seems to be low.
Yeah.
So yeah. But the main question that I actually wanted to ask was activity during lockdown. Are we? I'm not currently surveying. I'm going to request that I join the group.
Yeah.
But are you allowed to go out and survey?
Well, at the moment, what we're recommending is just the observational parts of the form. I think I mentioned it in the presentation. We've kept up the observational sides if your survey point is within walking distance of your home, because we've kept with the government guidelines of stay at home, but obviously with the exercise that you can get out and an observational survey, it doesn't take any time at all, really. You can do that as you're walking. However, the water quality side of things we've postponed just because it does take a little bit longer and perhaps pushes that time that you're outside beyond that what's recommended. So we've asked for observational surveys, and it's been great to see that a lot of you have been able to get out for those observational surveys. However, we've obviously not put any pressure on anybody getting out at the moment. It's not really appropriate, but we're sticking with the observational surveys so far until the government guidelines change. Basically, we're sticking with that.
Okay, and the other question is, there was mention about the new garden or the garden village at Culmpton, but how do you use your information to work with the current landowners to improve the situation?
So we've got quite a lot going on at the moment, Carl, and it might be that we run out of time to discuss those sorts of things here in this event, but there are lots of different links going in. And just to link back to your previous question about Culmpton, we are exploring doing a Trout in the Town project. So the Wild Trout Trust runs a Trout in the Town scheme, which we're investigating the feasibility of doing around the Culmpton area. So if that's something that you would like to get involved in, it'd be great to talk to you as a fly fisher and an otter surveyor and that kind of thing. Okay. So if you're happy to share your email address either with myself or Lydia or through any means, then we can keep in touch and give you more information on your second question as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Carl. A couple of other questions we had from people in the room. So Viv asked, how are we linking with Riverfly? Lydia, I don't know if you can take that one. Yeah,
no problem. So yeah, obviously Richard Horrocks, I don't know if you're aware, but he runs the Riverfly group within the Culm and is very involved with the Connecting the Culm project. So he's kind of he's also linked to the West Country CSI as well. He takes West Country CSI surveys. So we're linked that way. We think that West Country CSI links really well with Riverfly and is almost the next step from West Country CSI, because Riverfly is a bit more involved. And because it's more involved, it has suffered a little bit with the COVID lockdowns and restrictions, because training has not been possible, because it does involve, you know, groups getting together and it does involve hands-on training. I believe they're trialing some online methods, but be interesting to see how that works out, because it does involve in the river activity. But yes, we are linked with them particularly well in this project, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say as well that they've fed into the Riverfly data that Richard shared previously has fed into the evidence review which we've done, which looks at lots of different topics, water quality and Riverfly within that. Currently, when we were writing it, we didn't have enough data on CSI to kind of supplement all the existing data sets, and Riverfly included in that. So hopefully in future versions of that document, we'll actually have some fantastic, community-led monitoring data to feed in and fill in the gaps of what we don't know about the water quality day to day. So yeah, thanks to everyone so far who's been involved. It's been really exciting in the last 9 or 12 months to see this take off and get so many people really interested in actually getting out by the river and doing things so far. So yeah, thanks very much for everyone's efforts.
Brilliant. And just a couple of final technical questions from Prudence and Waterbowl. How long does the process of obtaining samples take, and are the collected samples analysed, or the data analysed within the group? So how long did the sampling take, and is data analysed in the group?
So the sampling can take as little as 10 minutes or as long as you want, really. Some people say that they love to sit by the riverbank and take time over their samples, purely because their disturbance by walking to their sample spot disturbs all the wildlife, and then if they sit for 10 minutes and let it all settle down and then take their survey and their sample data, then they find that they see a lot more. But if time is an issue, then you can do it within 10 minutes very easily. In terms
Or Gloucester.
I don't think that's questions, is it? Someone's not muted.
I think it might be Prudence.
Yeah,
trying to ask something, but I don't know if it's your question.
I was just going to say thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Prudence. I thought it was the radio. Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Prudence. And then the sample data. So the water quality tests are done on site. So we recommend you get a bucket and a rope or something, and you collect your water sample. And then those instruments that I showed on the slides, they're taken with you, and all the data is collected on site. And then the data analysis, we've been doing that back here in our homes and our computers. But it's definitely something we'd love for input. If you are particularly interested in data analysis and you want to have a look at your own data, then we are quite happy, or the data for the Culm catchment, for example, we're quite happy to share that data. So do let us know if you'd like to see that.
Fantastic, thanks, Leah. And as we've gone over slightly, I'll just now give people a little bit of an insight into what's coming up. Oh, a couple more comments have come in. It's just information. Brilliant. One more question. I think we'll just quickly take that one from Sam. who's an geoenvironmental engineer, does that mean you're not sampling from uniform depths and in the same way? So quite a technical question, but quite an easy one, hopefully.
Well, no, I think the answer is no to that, Sam, because each sample points, we're sampling from the riverbank and we estimate depths and widths. We don't get people to get in the river itself, partly due to safety, but partly just because it makes it easier and more accessible for people to do that sample. So no, it's not uniform every time.
Cool. Thanks, Lydia. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. There we go. So thanks everybody for coming along tonight. It's been a really excellent evening and afternoon to hear about Culm CSI and all the wonderful stories that people have from in and around the river, and sharing in what you do out there and the results and the impact that it has. So on to the next events, and the first one we have coming up next week, which Stephen mentioned, is the Water Quality Working Group. That's next Wednesday, is that the 23rd, at 4:30. So the details are on the CTC website. If you go under Blueprint or under latest news, and there's a working groups article on there. And then the next big thing, kind of in terms of catchment adaptation workshop, is the climate resilience for the Culm workshop that we've got coming up on the 14th of April. So that's again at 4:30, and we have Dr. Freya Gary from the Met Office and Rob Hopkins, who's of the Transition Town, Totnes and Transition Town movement in general, and they're going to be talking about the impacts of climate change and looking at visions, more positively oriented visions for the future. So again, details on the CTC website, and you can register that via Eventbrite. If anybody's got any queries or they want to follow anything up from tonight's event, feel free to email us on the hello@connectingtheculm.com email address. And it just remains to say one last thank you to everybody for coming along and joining us tonight, asking your wonderful questions and answering those wonderful questions, and very much sharing everybody's experience. And thank you to our wonderful presenter Lydia as well for putting together such an informative and really good presentation. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you hopefully at another Connecting the Culm event soon. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye everybody. Thank you.